everybody.
Hello.
How's it going? I feel like we're doing a focus
Pretty
group.
good.
Like, you've been a listener for 150 of these now. What? Please, is this our annual review or a focus group? I don't know which.
Oh, I don't know. I think you said that you mentioned in LinkedIn there, Anthony, that I was old, like an old listener. And I probably have to clarify with listeners, I'm not that old, but I have been there for a while.
Yeah, we were trying to figure out
in your podcast
if you were a single digit listener or a double digit listener, but you have to be one of those two things for sure. Yeah, you were in there pretty early.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
The days of the closet studio and the what was your first setup? It was just like I guess it was mostly the same room that it always was.
Yeah, but I didn't
have
a
weird closet era like me.
No, but I had that like old blue snowball
the snowball.
microphone.
Yeah, the snowball era.
Yeah, the snowball era. That's what we'll
thanks
call
for
that.
making it this far.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure. It's like long time listener, first time caller kind of situation going on.
Yeah. Well, so we've got Erin Edwards here with us today, and Erin, like you have been not only listening to us for a long time, but you've been on your own kind of interesting journey, and we've sort of touched base over the years about where you're going. And when you started, you were doing, flying helicopters, and which we're going to talk about. By the way, we're going to have a helicopter conversation today. And then now
there hasn't been enough helicopter content on this podcast lately.
We need more helicopter stuff.
And in the spirit of ingenuity, we'll talk about helicopters.
Exactly, yeah. And now you're at NASA, and so like there's a fun journey, and sometimes we like to have shows here just us talking to interesting people, and you get to be the interesting person today. So we're excited to talk to you today. But should we do some drinks to start? What are we kicking here? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm still on the clock, so I have 4 shots of straight espresso in a cup that was gifted to me by my staff. Chaos coordinator, which is pretty apt for the job that I do. So not very exciting today. My apologies. But what do you guys have on the go?
Jake, you go first.
Hold on.
I've got a whole thing.
But did you just say 4 shots of espresso isn't exciting? Because I think it's actually the opposite of that.
I gotta stay awake, guys. I'm busy. All right, I gotta do what I gotta.
Is this? I can't tell if this is a pilot life thing that you learned or a government employee life thing that you learned, and I don't know which.
Both.
There was 2 shots from each side. Yes.
That's right.
Yeah. Oh wow. Well, you're in good company. I am also not having alcohol today, mostly because I ran out and forgot to get some. But what I do have is just a regular horchata. So this is a very, very Mexican drink today. Do the influencer thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you can see it.
Is it lime or something?
No. So it's like horchata is normally like a rice milk kind of thing.
Right?
So you
It's
put
like
it in a
Mexican
blender.
paralyzer is what this is.
But it's not actually milk though. Like it's rice, and this is the starches of the rice, and you sweeten it, and you put a little cinnamon and stuff in it. So it's like this nice kind of sweet thing. This particular one has coconut in it. This is sort of a special coconut version, which I love. They're really good. My wife picks them up at this like hole in the wall place. They come in like used water bottles. This is what you buy it in. So this is also very Mexican thing. People they reuse their water bottles and fill them up with horchata and sell them.
I don't like the way
so
that you
buy
said
these things
it comes in used water bottles. Like I don't like the way that you said that. Yeah.
I don't know what this was before, but it wasn't horchata to start with.
In the era of like microplastics awareness, I don't feel like that's a great decision around all that.
We're reusing plastic here, Anthony. It's good. It's a good.
There you go. Exactly.
Conscious decision.
But no caffeine, so I would drink that. Sounds great though.
No, just sugar. That's a lot of sugar.
All right, I got a whole
Anthony,
thing here, Jake. I got some stuff. So number 1, I've still got a Star-based beer here. I got Star Hopped hazy IPA. We've got one of these left.
Nice.
So that's the drink, Jake. But we've got to, as much as we ever do them, we've got a sponsor for this show. And in addition to the Star-based sponsorship. And this is why I asked you how I should send things to you, because I have a couple of these, okay? Now, I was in my email a couple of months ago, maybe a couple weeks ago at this point, and I was looking for something, and I found a completely unrelated thread that I had not replied to, and I totally thought I did reply to. So I just sent a 2-year delayed reply to this email thread and was like, I hope this is still an email that works. So listen, I'm drinking this nice cold can, Jake. But what makes your hands more comfortable when you're drinking a can? Is a koozie. Okay. You might have seen these because I've seen these at like LL Bean and some stores. Look at this thing.
Whoa.
All right, this is the puffin drinkware, like astronaut, EMU kind of situation. So I've got a couple of these. I think there's 4 in this bag, so I can send you them. But I need to know how to get it to your address, and you told me that's impossible. So you might have to wait until you come to the U.S. again.
It might be,
which is usually the way.
Yeah, you might need the spacesuit part of that to get all the way here. It's going to be that much of a journey. So,
so I don't. Yeah, I mean, I definitely saw this in, I think it was like LL Bean or REI or something, that they sell like all these different models, and so I was chatting with them, and they sent me a couple of these, and they were like, we don't really do sponsorships. And I was like, we don't really either. And he's like, well, I'll send you some of these. And you can drink them on the show. So there's the spacesuit, but they make other very funny ones as well. So yeah,
I love it.
I'm gonna see. I am interested to see how the hood works out, like the helmet portion of this. I don't know how drinking with that's gonna be. So keep your eyes peeled. There's also a little backpack that you can put stuff. Like there's a little Velcro backpack component here.
What accessories do you need for your beer? I don't know.
I mean, it said your phone. Let's see.
Yeah, just put your phone in there.
iPhone Mini.
Exactly.
Look, boom. iPhone Mini right in there. That's the perfect size.
So now you can like creep on people while you're drinking your drink.
While you're drinking.
That works well.
It's so good. Yeah.
POV, you are a beer can.
Yeah.
There you go. So thanks to Rick for the puffin situation. So I'm gonna put the can in there and we'll figure this out. It's
reminding me when I lived in Canada, I had this. I don't know where I got it, but I had one mitten. It was like a single mitten, and it was a special mitten for holding a beer. So like if you imagine like your hand would go around it and it like sewed all the way across. Like you couldn't open your hand in it. It was just like sewed shut.
It's like an Edward 40 hands.
Yeah, and it just had a slot. It had a slot for a beer can, so you could drink a beer with your mittens on, and like it fit perfectly in there.
I can't tell if this was your most Canadian era or most degenerate era. I don't know like what you were in at that moment.
It was my degen era for sure. Yeah.
Amazing.
All right, before we get going on real topics, people are complimenting your background in the chat, and we said right before we went live, we need we're keeping score of like, is 2001 a great movie or the most boring ever or both, and we need to know where you lie on this spectrum.
Okay, I don't know if it's the most impressive movie of all time, but I thought for when it was made, it was shot pretty well, and they did some pretty impressive stuff in terms of visual effects and that kind of thing. It definitely did drag, but it felt very 1960s artistic, like they're pulling something from like the French noir era and really making a point with 15-minute long scenes. But I like it. I'll watch it on occasion. It's pretty good.
A nuanced answer.
Level-headed answer. Yeah.
Thank you. It's my government answer. I can't say yes or no, I guess.
Yeah. I feel like the movies in that time, they just needed a good editor. Like, did editors not exist in this time? I feel like editors was that a new profession that came out in like the 1970s or something? Because like this movie and also the original Star Trek both have like right at the beginning, like this awful drawn out, like this 30-minute scene should have been 90 seconds. And they just, it was the monkeys or the gorillas or whatever in 2001. And Star Trek, the original movie, was like that, where they were just like going through, I don't know, like the space rainbow. They just had like synth music playing, and everyone was like looking really concerned in the bridge. And it's like, bang, 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 bang. And then Kirk's like, oh my God, what's going to happen? And that was like 30 minutes of that. And it's like, brutal. We need to trim this down a little bit. But anyway,
there's also a lot of credits at the beginning of old movies. Like, I don't know why I'm holding a pencil.
You're taking notes. Marking it down.
Taking notes. Yeah. That's right. There's also like 30 minutes of credits at the beginning, not at the end of a movie back then. So they had to have these long drawn out shots, but I don't know anything about film. I just, yay or nay.
That's where it's at. That's what we wanted. We're trying to keep score.
Perfect.
So I got you down.
Right down the middle.
Put it down. Yeah. Nuanced. It's 1 point for both sides.
Exactly.
Room for improvement.
Okay. Now I need to decide if I'm going to drink this by holding the arms as handles or what. Keeps your nose warm. It keeps your nose warm when you're taking a sip. It's pretty nice.
I don't
This
know
would be
how
good.
I feel about that.
No.
Okay.
Yep. So what we
I
got.
don't know. I'll see.
All right, the show's yours, Jake.
When you send me mine and it finally gets here, if it does, Godspeed to it. I'm going to see if it works better with a bottle. That's what I want to try.
It will. It will. 100%.
The can looks like it's really hidden, and you're just.
It is. I don't have any bottles in the house, so Now, to be fair, their marketing images show it with a can, so maybe I need a tall boy, not one of these.
There you go. That could do it.
Yeah. Arizona iced tea. Yeah. Or that, do you remember that one beer we got at the beach house in Florida? Someone sent us. I don't remember. Some listener brought it, and it was like the can was like, it was like a gallon in a can. Like it was enormous, and it was like there was a Sharpie.
The hand drawn.
It was like moon beer, like 17% or something ungodly. They'll still know where that came from.
You buy them in used water bottles.
Yeah,
exactly.
used water bottles. Yeah, it was an old keg from a. All right. Okay. So let's get into this. Okay, Erin, I know this is a space show, but I do want to have a helicopter segment, and it only has to be 5 minutes because I literally know nothing about helicopters. So we can't really. There's not going to be any follow-up questions from me because I don't know what to ask.
What's the question going to be? Yeah.
I just
helicopters.
I want to learn. I want to learn about fun things with helicopters, and you flew them.
Well, tell him about auto rotation. He'll like that.
No, we don't need to talk about that. No one actually wants to auto rotate, but yeah.
Maybe just tell us what you flew. Yeah, like what did you pilot?
So I still technically fly for the Canadian Air Force. Obviously not too much anymore. I have to go back home every 90 days or so to keep current. So I'm very fortunate they let me still do that and play with a helicopter every once in a while. But I flew the CH-146, that's what we call it, the Griffin, which essentially is a Bell 412. So if you were to think of like another 1960s Kubrick movie, think of Vietnam, it's like an upgraded version of that type of helicopter. And I flew that. Yeah, there you go.
This one even says Canada. Look at that.
It's true. That's a Griffin. The ones I fly were blue, but same kind of thing. So I was involved in tactical and special operations aviation for about 5 or 6 years and went overseas with Canada as a pilot. And while I was doing that, I was trying to bring in some of the space stuff to help us out a little bit. And that's kind of how I went on a total tangent. And that's not the reason why I ended up at NASA, but it certainly helped because I had a little bit more of an understanding of military space stuff. So yeah, helicopters are rad. I kind of jokingly mentioned on occasion to our two Canadian military astronauts, Jeremy and Josh, that are both fighter pilots, that the person they picked to do this job for the first time ever to support them in the astronaut office as a non-astronaut Canadian military officer was a helicopter pilot. So, is a fighter pilot.
Is there like a Hilo fixed wing rivalry still alive and well? Is that kind of a thing?
I mean, it's a friendly rivalry. I'll still say it's a little harder to fly a helicopter, but that's just me.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Is there can you give us a fun story or maybe a scary story about flying a helicopter? What? Because I always think of flying helicopters as like a little bit you must have a little bit of crazy somewhere in you to fly a helicopter.
Definitely. Yeah, especially how we flew it. But it's probably also crazy off the top of my head. I can't think of anything that's particularly nuts, but probably most relevant to this discussion is on occasion we have to transit the helicopters across the country to go do exercises or whatever. And certainly when I was overseas, we did a lot of really long flights, but you do all this preparation, all this planning. It's all tactical and everything. But really the most important thing for me is where am I getting my coffee from? And where can I have snacks stored on board such that I can always eat? And it's to the point where people that I flew with were like, hey, before we leave, end of our pre-flight checklist, have you eaten? Has Captain Erin Edwards eaten anything and had coffee before we're trapped in a helicopter with her for 8 hours? So there's definitely been wait, you can strap a cooler down to the deck and have people feed you snacks and stuff. That's definitely something you have to consider. And in every possible pocket I've ever had on my flight suit and vest and stuff, it's yes, there's sometimes there's bullets and stuff down there, but there's also Cheetos, right? As required, just always have snacks. I think that's probably what I'm most known for is snack planning. It became part of our procedures for sure.
I don't feel like I feel like I have more questions about helicopters for sure at this point. Like
Yeah.
you had bullets in your pockets and Cheetos and
And Cheetos.
you're trying to figure out, just make sure you grab the right one at the right time.
Exactly.
Yeah. Jake, have you ever flown on a helicopter? You sound terrified.
I
of
have.
helicopters.
I have
Okay.
flown on them. Yeah. My dad worked in the oil industry when I was a kid, and there was like a bunch of surveying stuff that used to happen. So one time he was able to like sneak me on to one of these surveying flights. So that was like when I was a kid. First thing I did, that was pretty rad. And then I did like I did one over like out of Maui on a vacation once. There was like a tourist flight, and we flew across to, is it Molokai? Is that other island right next to it? And you fly in and out of the things. But that's the one that tripped me out because I was an adult by then, and so now I have fears. I didn't not when I was a kid. When I was a kid. But like it was fine. Like if we were moving, I was totally okay with it. I'm like, this is just like an airplane, but it looks different. And then we went down this like coastline, and then like went into this little like a bay with high cliffs. So like there was like wall of stuff around all sides, and the guy just parked it there and just like we just kind of like looked around because you could do that in a helicopter. Apparently you can just stand still, and I was like, this is unnatural. Like we are defying all laws of physics and offending God. I think what we're doing right now. So I didn't really like it. I was like, this is this uncomfortable part of me. I want to keep moving forward again. I think we need to do this.
This is amazing.
Yeah.
And
it's a little weird when you're.
We discovered in the pre-stream that we were doing in the Discord that Jake had a childhood fear of his parents running out of gas while they were on drives. So I feel like these two things combined is just it's like your fear factor is like a helicopter with the visible gas tank indicator. Yes.
Yeah, just watching it like tick down. Nobody wants that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It is a little weird when the stuff you can do and how versatile helicopters are. And sometimes you'll talk to people that also fly helicopters in different domains, and they're like, "Wait, you guys do what?" But it is. We had sometimes we'll have people rappel out of the helicopter for like a pretty basic tactical task, and we're practicing one time, and this one fellow, because they were required to learn how to rappel through trees so we can really put these army dudes anywhere they need to go. And this one fellow got stuck on his way down in the trees. So we were in the hover, just 5 feet above the trees. They're flopping around for probably 20 minutes as we got this guy unhooked and like could try and get him up or down again. So it was a lot of work. And we're like, you know what? I think if I tried to explain this to the average person that I was in the hover over a trees waiting for this guy who rappelled out of my helicopter with the backpack and got hung up, that this would be unusual. But it's a lot of fun. I miss it, but I don't miss like the helmet hair that I would get and having to deal with finding snacks all the time. So
Yeah, I remember when you like in the early days of our Discord, you would pop in and out, and we were joking before this. I was like, but we could go back and like do a statistical analysis of your messages and find out when you were deployed and when you weren't. You would just sort of like come back and you would like rapid fire catch up with all the news, and then you would disappear.
Yeah.
Okay, let's not give any people ideas on how they can track us, but that what, probably, or when I was really busy. Actually, part of the reason why I disappeared for so long was grad school. And I was so busy with work and flying in grad school. So you could either deployments, I guess, or
she's fuzzing it.
School.
You're fuzzing it for us,
Well, so let's talk about that then. So you did go to school. I remember that kind of being one of the early things that you had talked about, and getting a master's or something in. And fill us in. What did you figure out?
Yeah, actually, that Discord was super helpful. There's a bunch of people I went back and forth with. I'm like, hey, have you heard about this program? And like, I wasn't going to become like a bench engineer or be involved in that kind of stuff, but getting some input from you guys about what would be useful. And at the time, I was just interested in learning more just in general about space. And it kind of ended up being kind of human factors focused and then space law focused in the end. And I was just planning on doing it because having a master's would be cool. And we're super fortunate in the military that they'll subsidize you under certain circumstances. So I did that through University of North Dakota. They have a space science program there. I would never recommend that someone working full-time, also deploying overseas and flying and having a bunch of other jobs at work, also consider doing a master's degree at the same time. Because there's definitely times in the helicopter while I was snacking, we're putting fuel in the helicopter, and I had, about half an hour to kind of just sit there. The other people were just kind of chatting in the back, and I'd pull out a textbook and like start highlighting. Like while I was deployed, like trying to like cram in this master's degree. So a lot of it was actually written while I was overseas, which is pretty entertaining.
That's wild.
And I did my thesis presentation from that facility as well. And I'm like, hey, if you guys hear a siren and I get up and run somewhere, just so you know, I'll get back to you.
But
so
like in a while, we don't know when. Like, it might be a bit.
Yeah,
so hang
but
up and I'll email you when I'm back on here for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it ended up being really valuable because a lot of the stuff that we learned in that program, it's interdisciplinary, but obviously is highly relevant to NASA. So especially the human factors part, and a lot of the project management and mission design stuff that we learned too, like having a little bit of a background in that's definitely helping with this job down here. So it was valuable. I thought it was great. I definitely recommend that school because they were super flexible with my horrendous schedule for a couple of years there. So it was good.
Mm. No, that's awesome. Yeah. I always like, I don't know, sometimes I think about going back to school and doing something like that, like some sort of like, flexible online or, something that I can kind of like piece into my life. And because I'm always like so interested in the topics of those things, like what you said, space law and that kind of thing. I'm like, wow, there's like, those are probably just so much fun to like learn about those kind of things and like really explore them academically. I think sometimes I get like a little starved of nuance, just like in the social media world where it's just like everything's a 128 character take. And I'm like, I'd love to read a textbook on one of these things at some point and learn something for real about something,
I like that you think that you would be able to piecemeal one of those programs. Like not for the program's sake, but for you. Like we did an episode of this show where we came up with a fake NASA budget and you had done more work than the NASA budget in some years. So as if you would just like take it easy and like do it one day a week and just read a little bit. You would it would be
this is a problem.
Yeah, but you would go 1,000% into it and burn out immediately.
Yeah, so. I can see that for sure.
Yeah,
I might cut into my. All that said, I do support it.
Time, though, right? Yeah. My pool horchatas will be severely diminished in that scenario. So,
yeah,
I do support it though.
Yeah.
So how did you end up working with Canadian Astronauts? Because you're leaving us hanging on a huge jump here.
It's like
what does that even mean? I've got a lot of questions.
It's a bit of a saga. It will probably take like a weird, extended, dramatic take, kind of like this movie to explain the whole thing. But so I think the Canadian Astronaut Corps, given that we've got potentially flights happening for 2 Canadian astronauts at the same time in the same, we'll see how it goes, but roughly they're around the same time next year, maybe. That they were like, you know what, we could probably use a little bit of help in the NASA astronaut office. And they have a small liaison cell where they'll bring in U.S. military folks to help out, usually to help with CAPCOM duties, because that's a pretty busy job and there's not a lot of people that are doing CAPCOM. Most of the time, the people that are working in mission control doing that controller position are also engineers or they're astronauts. So everyone's really busy. So they like to bring in the odd person who can solely focus on that. And there was maybe some thought for me to help the Canadian Astronaut Corps with whatever else they needed down in Houston. There's already a number of Canadians down there, but most of them are working in support of ISS programs as robotics flight controllers. Super rad job. I didn't realize this was something you could like go to the CSA, become a robotics flight controller, and then end up in Houston almost permanently. It's super cool what they get to do. But so I think that was the plan, and they approached the Air Force with that because Josh and Jeremy are still both serving colonels and pilots in the Air Force, and they talked to the CSA, and CSA is like, yeah, we could build a position. So they put out a message to all of us in the military, at least in the Air Force, saying, if you're interested, send a letter. I was actually in Texas at the time doing an exercise with my old unit, and I saw this message, and I told my boss, I'm like, this position sounds really cool, like working as a CAPCOM, supporting astronauts, that sounds rad. I'm not going to get it. Like, there's no way this random helicopter pilot nerd is going to get this job. And she's like, you know what? I think you'll regret it if you don't put your letter in and try to apply. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. I guess I'll just write a letter, I suppose. They're going to pick someone else. They're not going to pick me.
I understand your instinct, but they're also like, no, we're looking for a helicopter space nerd. Like, that's exactly what we want. It's like kind of ideal.
It didn't quite say helicopter space nerd, but read between the lines. They're definitely looking for a massive nerd for sure. And so I put my application in, and a couple of months later, didn't forget about it necessarily, but was like busy doing all this other stuff at my old unit, which was up west of Ottawa there. And then I got this email saying we'd like to bring you in for an interview. I'm like, okay, still not going to get it. And Jeremy Hansen was on the call. The branch chief for crew operations, James Kelly, who's a former shuttle guy, was on the call. A bunch of senior military people did the interview. I'm like, still not going to get this job. Whatever. I'll keep doing my operations job at my unit. And then Jeremy actually called me at work. I was sitting next to my warrant officer, John, and Jeremy's like, hey, we want to invite you to come down and work in Houston if you're still interested. And I pretty much swore, I think, on the phone. I'm like, are you bleeping kidding me? Like, you want me to come do this job? Of course I'll bleep and come and do that job. And my warrant looked at me and he's like, oh my God, like, you probably just lost this job. Anyway, so it was a great conversation. And within that was May or June of last year. And by August, I was down here getting myself all squared away to work at NASA. So I was kind of put on loan from the RCF down to the Canadian Space Agency. They made a position for me and then told NASA that this is a person that we want. NASA interviewed me as well. And I ended up in the crew operation, or eventually ended up in the crew operations office, but I wasn't expecting to be pulled in to be the astronaut operations officer. That happened after, which was also interesting. So that's how I ended up. Sorry for the long diatribe there, but that's how I ended up down here in Texas.
What I like to think is that Jeremy, seems like a great guy, but I could see that he probably is watching, Ingenuity doing so well, and there's some more Return helicopters and Dragonfly. No, he's like, we gotta make sure all the helicopter pilots have other jobs, because otherwise, us fixed wing types are out. Like, this is the future of astronauts are all helicopters, based on what I'm looking at here. So we gotta clear out the ranks a bit.
Hey, there's a lot of us, and I'm personally, I love it. I didn't think I'd see this number of helicopter pilots, but you've got some fantastic people in the astronaut office on the U.S. side as well that fly helicopters, and there's always a fist bump in the hallway. Exactly.
You got to fit in tinier spots. I'm just saying, watch your back, Jeremy. Watch your back. That's all I'm saying.
Is it like a Jeep thing where when you pass in the hall, you have to kind of do the two fingers up? Like, is that sort of a...
Yeah, what's the symbol? What's the symbol?
Well...
It's like a rodeo thing. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, so it's been crazy.
Are you like lassoing something?
Yeah, like the rotors. Come on.
Okay.
You know what? We'll go with that. I'm gonna
better if you're like holding a badge lanyard or something, so that you just like passing by each other in the hall.
Your NASA badge. Yeah.
Exactly. But yeah, it's been super rad. Now I have, just like back at home, I have 4 jobs, but I'm loving all of it. This is why we have 4 shots of espresso at 3:30 in the afternoon, but like, do what you got to do. But yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm laughing at the fact that you have this interview where they bring in, what you described sounds like 7 or 8 people on this call, including an astronaut, and you're like, no, I'm not in the running here. You have
must be a long list.
Like multiple government organizations across like 2 different countries arranging like very high level people into a call.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're clearly doing 50 of these. Yeah, 100%.
He does so many of these interviews.
Yeah. But it's been really cool because I'm the first person that they've brought down from Canada that's not an astronaut to do this type of job. Like, I'm not a robotics flight controller. I am not smart enough to do that job. But there's other things that the office definitely needs. And it's kind of cool that in this job, NASA has this very interesting way of like finding all of the skills you have and then leveraging all of them. So it's like, oh, helicopters, we're looking at vertical landing stuff and human landing system. Do you want to get involved in that? I'm like, obviously, yes. Like, oh, you have an operations background. We have a hole now in the astronaut operations office. Like, do you want to be an OPSO? I'm like, I don't know what that means for NASA. And I've been here for literally 3 seconds, but sure, I'll give that a try. The CAPCOM thing, super cool. Super enjoying that. I'm just working on finishing up a requal for my dive certification, so I can go dive in the NBL and watch them do their EVAs and stuff. So wow. I used to dive with the Navy, so that's pretty cool as well. And I know, Jake, I think you and I have talked that we had a somewhat similar geology background. I'm not as good at geo as you were, but going back to the moon, there's some stuff that I can get involved in there too. So it's like all the little things that I never thought I'd be able to combine into one job, which would be the most amazing thing ever. NASA is definitely very good at integrating all of your skills and giving you work to do. So I'm happy about that.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Giving me way too much credit for Geo though.
Yeah. He just grew up around rocks. That's really it. Yeah.
I should have way more considering where I grew up, like a geology like mecca of the.
It's the most disappointing thing about him for his parents.
Middle of the continent.
Yes. To be honest though, like it's a little bit of a stretch for me. That was a while ago now. So someone's like, yeah, describe this, igneous whatever. I'd be like, I don't remember. I can tell you that I don't want to hit it with a helicopter. Like that's about where those worlds combine for me. But yeah,
I can tell you which phase of rocks are good to land on and which ones are not. That's kind of it.
And which ones I don't want to hit. But it's cool. There's so much work going on down here that they'll keep you busy for sure.
That's awesome.
The CAPCOM thing, is that like you're gonna be a CAPCOM, like full blown CAPCOM, or is there a Canadian? I don't know what else there would be, like a Canadian specific one in case he says some term that Americans don't say. And like, can we get a translation on this?
It's CAPCOM, but there's a U at the end. It's COUM.
He asked for a double. Like, what do we do with that information?
So there is that was actually the primary job they had me bring me down here for, was for CAPCOM.
Wow.
But I'm halfway through my training flow for that, so I'm hoping by August I'll be certified. And it'll be pretty cool if Josh is up there and I can be one of his CAPCOMs. But there's a lot of us that will work on that console because it's staffed pretty much around the clock. But yeah, it's a lot though. You do a lot of the same ground school classes the astronauts do, so you can kind of figure out how you'd want to translate what you're seeing or what the engineers are telling you to what the astronauts might see on station. So you take a lot of the same classes, you're talking the same language. And then they just put you through a series of like sims with all of the other flight controllers that are learning how to do their jobs. They break everything on station and then you'll have to figure out how to fix it. So those sims are definitely entertaining. So yeah, I'll be a CAPCOM hopefully soon. Hopefully. And that'll be another really rad thing I get to do on occasion is help the ISS program that way.
So that's specific for ISS. Are there Artemis plans in the works of like what the CAPCOM situation would be there, or?
Yeah, so the exploration side, they're doing their own they're setting up that whole flow for people now, but they've taken people who are a little bit more senior because they want you to be certified on ISS, and that's to stream to get certified for CAPCOM. Well, actually, most flight controller positions now, and then they'll pull you from there into other missions, I guess. But I don't think I'll be on that one just because I'll be so new. But station's still complicated enough. Like it's a lot of information to take in sometimes, especially from some of these really smart engineers that are trying to tell you what the problem is. And I'm like, I would talk to me like I'm 5.
I would kind of suspect that ISS would be the more complicated, like vehicle to figure out from an operations standpoint.
There are way more parts.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, not to say Orion's like a tin can or anything, but it's a single purpose kind of vehicle, right? Like it's got,
for sure.
It takes you from A to B, it keeps you safe and gets you to the whatever, right? So, but like ISS is like, it's a whole.
It's also not actively falling apart. So like, there's
also that, yeah.
There's not a leaks on Orion and stuff that they're fixing all the time. So yeah, there's a little bit of a difference.
I think they're using ISS because it's been around for so long. It's like it's a measurable quantity to train somebody on, and once you've got that handled, then you can go off and do all the cool stuff with like
stable, right? It's it's stable.
Yeah,
as long as there isn't a new Russian module attached to it, it's very stable.
Yeah.
So,
or even if like you've got it's still going around where it's at. So like you've got a little bit of time to figure some stuff out. If it takes 5 minutes longer than you thought it would, that's not really that big of a deal. Like we'll figure that out. If something takes you 5 minutes longer than it should have on Artemis 2, that could be a big deal. Like there are moments in which that could be a very big deal. So that's
so they've taken more of the senior folks and some of the astronauts to work on the CAPCOM part for that. But it's super exciting to watch though. I'm very excited to see how they integrate all that stuff.
Yeah. I'm curious to hear so I'm very interested in this idea of like having CAPCOMs that aren't astronauts because
we'd be good at it is like, what Jake's getting on about.
Obviously.
No, but like, so there's like, it's like one of those, I feel like it's one of those gatekeepy things from like the original era where it's like, I like one of the original ideas was like, it's like, no, we have to put an astronaut
talks to the astronauts.
No one else understands how incredibly complex and meaningful our astronaut brains are, and no one can even conceive them unless they're another astronaut too. So that's the only person that can do the job. And now we're we're past that a little bit, and now it's like, no, like there are lots of smart people in the world and everyone can figure out problems, and so like we're moving past that, which I think is a really good thing. But I'm kind of curious to hear like what that actually means in practice, right? Like, are there parts of your job where you're like, man, I really wish I was an astronaut so that I could understand that better? Or are there like pluses where it's just like, because I'm not an astronaut, like I can provide a perspective here that is actually not just at par, but maybe better or different or some way, right?
Yeah, I think maybe not so much like the astronaut perspective is obviously super important because you are almost like another crew member, but you're on the ground. So you and the flight director work really closely to make sure what you're passing up to the astronauts in terms of like tone, tenor, information makes sense, but it's not too much information because you want to figure out like, what do they need to know right now? To give them the context, to give them the warm and fuzzy that their station's fine, whatever's going on, and that we're working on the problem, but we need you to do something. So it's an interesting relationship that you develop. But I like to think that a lot of our CAPCOMs actually are flight controllers or engineers in other disciplines, and then they come over to the CAPCOM role. And you see definitely that they have a really good understanding of their previous console position, and they're all really like genius engineers. So that's super helpful. Yeah. But I think where you see differences is in my background coming from like military aviation. You'd be flying around listening to like 6 or 7 or 8 different radios at the same time, kind of like bringing that information while also flying. So there's some things that I'm like listening to a room of people talking and picking out information is relatively easy for me. But the part where I find it difficult and where I can see why they wanted to retain people initially that were trained specifically for that position, like as astronauts, was the technical piece. But now like we have this almost year-long training plan where you learn the high-level technical stuff so you can at least translate it in a way that makes sense, or you know the questions to ask or where to go to find some of those answers if you don't understand. But I think everyone brings their own flavor to it. And so it's a little bit more representative now of like how many people are trying to contribute to this program. And it's cool that they let engineers and people like me that I'm not a flight controller and I'm not an astronaut and I'm also a Canadian. So they're opening up a little bit more so we can have those conversations in ways that make sense to all of the astronauts on station too. So I think it's cool. Everyone brings their own background to it. My strength, like I said, is listening to all these radios and managing all the conversations. Whereas you have flight controllers that have been, engineers for 10 years. Their specialty is like, I understand the technical piece and they might have to work a little bit harder to figure out how to listen to all those conversations, but we all bring something different. And I love that they open it up. It's pretty cool.
I mean, I imagine it would be like in an emergency situation, having someone like you would probably be a pretty big benefit. Like I presume based on your background that you're pretty like calm under pressure. I think you're gonna have to be, and so like the things like that are probably good.
Hovered over trees while unhooking someone from a tree.
Exactly.
And what you didn't mention was the helicopter was blowing the trees around a lot. So it didn't seem easy. Yeah.
If it happens next. But the thing that is so cool about, and I came here a little bit older than a lot of the engineers that were on my boot camp course. I'm probably like 18 years older than some of these folks. Is while maybe they haven't had some of those experiences like, stress under pressure, the amount of time it takes them to get trained to move into that front room to be in actual mission control, they've been trained the entire time in different positions of increasing responsibility and complexity as they move up. So by the time they get to the front room, they're equally as capable of handling situations under stress. And like my training flow is like a year at most, whereas literally every other flight controller position. So whether you're doing, conjunction analysis or managing station's attitude, or you're the flight surgeon or whomever, they have, or the robos, for example, I think is almost a 5-year training plan. So by the time they're front room certified, they've been stress tested in simulations and watching some of them work under pressure in those integrated simulations where we're all pretending to be the mission control team that day, I'm not worried about it. Those guys are great. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Huh. Yeah, no, it's a complex job. Like every time, I've heard of a Capcom before and I know what it is, but then, even just talking about this, I was like, man, there's like a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff packed into that. Like I'm just trying to game plan like all the different scenarios that you kind of have to be ready for. And I don't know. Is there a perfect person for it, or is everyone kind of just filling in a different part of the slice, and you depend on the team to fill in the other ones? Like it's kind of interesting how that role maybe even be transitioning away from that sort of, again, that old view of one guy can pilot the ship back into whatever, the Neil Armstrong fixing Gemini spin, right? Like he did it.
Bubble gum and a zap
Yeah.
strap. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I feel like everyone brings, like I said, their own flavor to it, and everyone in that team is bringing something different to it as well. So you cover off the gaps that appear, which don't happen very often. So it's and I remarked on this actually when I first got here, is like how team focused NASA is. Not that I didn't work as a team in a helicopter before, but like they really bring that message home that you're an engineer, you're on the ground, you are fulfilling a particular role, but you are supporting human spaceflight, and there are humans on board that station that you're responsible for. Mm-hmm. So they really drive that home. So it's like if you have an issue or you don't understand or something's not going right, you immediately reach to your team to make sure you're covered off. They don't want you working alone, right? Which is kind of a cool thing. Like they really, really focus on that team aspect, and that you're just as much of a part of that mission as everyone else. So.
Can you explain the situation in Houston where, so you are part of the Canadian Space Agency, right? Like, or are you part of NASA titular? I don't know, like what angle. And then is there also an ESA person that's doing the same thing, and a JAXA person? Like, what's the? How does this work? What are you coordinating with these astronauts? And have you met Victor Glover? That's my other question.
Yeah, I have. I mean, Victor, I'm in the office. So I am essentially Canadian military, seconded to the CSA, and then NASA created the position. So I have like 4 different people a lot of bosses. But my day-to-day, I actually...
It's one of them, Victor Glover.
This is like the government equivalent of a reverse merger SPAC. Like it's like...
it's crazy. Which has made some things a little challenging, but for the most part, like we're all trying to do the same thing. But my day-to-day in the operations office is like making sure that all of the astronauts that aren't assigned specifically to a mission are meeting all of their currency and training requirements for space flight readiness. So are they in the neutral buoyancy lab? Are they doing their EVAs? Are they flying a T-38? Are they doing their Russian classes? Are they doing their field medical training and their biomed and all of this stuff? And so coordinating all of that, and then the folks that are assigned...
For all the astronauts or just the Canadian ones?
It's a lot of astronauts. All of the astronauts that aren't assigned belong to crew ops.
Okay.
And once you're put onto a mission, they're owned by a different sort of, not owned, but their schedules are managed by a different group of people.
Like the mission team or whatever, then, right?
Yeah, exactly. But you still have to integrate all these resources. We all still need the same resources, but they also have the additional burden of, planning mission specific items. So it's a lot of work, but I don't think ESA and JAXA have an ops person permanently in the astronaut office proper. They obviously have their own offices at JSC, but this is the first time I think we've had a non-astronaut in the crew ops office as the operations officer, coordinating all this stuff. So my other job technically is, yes, I would also coordinate a couple of things for the Canadian astronauts, but the CSA does a lot of that on their own. I just happen to be another available person to help down here if they need
And did this come about because it sounded like the Canadian Space Agency wanted to contribute this role, or like what did NASA say, hey, can we get someone down here to do all this stuff? I'm trying to figure out how this came to be and what the arrangement is, because it seems
I
cool.
think it is super rad. I'm very excited that I think the initial push actually came from the astronauts themselves saying, like, listen, we think that there's some value. We see what the U.S. military officers can bring here on occasion when they're brought in to do CAPCOM. They have short, I think their postings are about 2 years or so. So they'll work on special projects. There's a bunch of U.S. military people that are contributing really awesome knowledge to programs at JSC. And I think the Canadians were like, I think we could probably do something similar. So they approached the Air Force then approached the CSA, and then the CSA said, hey, do you guys want another CAPCOM and another body? And NASA's like, free labor. Let's do it. Because I'm obviously still owned by a Canadian government. That's who I'm paid for. So, I mean, it's a win-win literally for everybody.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Huh.
Nice work, everybody.
Yeah. If I were to actually follow that paper trail, I'm like, I don't 100% understand how it all works, but I'm supporting who needs to be
that.
supported.
Yeah,
Yeah,
You just
exactly.
show up in the morning. Show up in the morning with your
someone
espresso
walks, when
shots.
you're like go to a party and someone's like, what do you do for work? Do you just be like, I work at NASA? Is that you're just gonna cut that story down to that point, right? That's what I would do.
Anthony, I mean, I have to go to a party, which I don't go to very often. But yeah, I think it's usually just easier to say, I'm a Canadian and I work for the CSA and NASA and sometimes the Air Force. And that's usually where I leave it because it's too complicated.
Have you heard of anyone in North America that flies things? I probably work for that organization.
Exactly. Or I know them. Exactly.
Yeah. Can we make the show like very Canadian for a few minutes? I want you to brag about like what does CSA do different? You know, like what is something that put
this American ass spacesuit on screen real quick.
Yeah, I love
this moonwalking spacesuit real quick.
No, but I'm curious to know like what the Canadian side of this, the Canadian perspective, the Canadian Space Agency, like what is something that we can provide to NASA that just cannot be fulfilled by a NASA representative or otherwise an American representative? I'm really curious to know like what's our differentiator from your inside perspective? Like what is something that like makes it that, you know, people go, I'm really glad that Erin's Canadian because this, like what is this, right? You know, like what is the thing that comes out?
I think it's
there's
the
just
fact
one
that
diehard NHL fan at NASA Johnson, and they're like, "Thank God."
No, it's not even that. It's not even that. It comes back to snacks. I think it's because I bring maple cookies to the office every time I come back. I think that's what it is. They wanted a conduit for like snacks they can't get in America.
Yeah, some kind of President's Choice brand or something like that.
Yeah.
The one pipeline didn't work out, but this snack pipeline really did. This is the one that worked out.
Exactly. I mean, I think the big ones are obviously like we offer robotics, and we kind of like to say you didn't have stationary without the arm, right? So we're still knocking that out of the park. I think it's a big thing, and I think the reputation that we built with that just opened up an opportunity that people were comfortable with the fact that if the Canadians want to bring someone down here, they're probably going to be pretty decent. So let's give this a try, and that's just how it is. The Canadians that are here, the 3 astronauts that are here full time, are fully integrated. They live here, so they contribute so much to the office. And when David visits for his requirements quarterly as well, he dives right back in as well. Not that the other astronauts from other agencies don't, but the Canadians are here full time, and they're here all the time offering whatever they can do to help. So I think that just built a really good relationship with the folks down here. So if Canada wants to bring people, they just kind of let us bring people, and it's amazing. And maple cookies.
As the American on the show, I support this entirely. I'm clearly open to any and all collaboration with Canadians.
Yeah.
Just generally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh. That's interesting. That's cool. I mean, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of like, you know, the fact that we have this job and that you angled into it, because I think it's really cool for us as a country. I'm stoked that it's there. So.
Yeah, I'm pretty.
And
happy
as our
to.
weird little Illuminati of space over in the Discord, like it's the real situation in there. So
that's right.
Don't want to plug that quick.
I should pop in and say hello because you guys were pretty important. Making sure they got
say
down
that.
There. So thank you very much, Discord. Appreciate you.
Yeah, we just kept you company while you're waiting to fill up your helicopter.
I haven't quite drawn the line about what role we played in that. You keep saying that, but I was like, wow, okay.
Sounds like a you thing. Yeah.
You were the one highlighting the textbook in the back of a helicopter, probably under fire in my imagination. There's like
no, not under fire.
I love your view of helicopters, Jake. I just you're like, it's as if I flew back in time and tried to explain airplanes to somebody, like from the 1700s.
Or if you flew back in time and tried to explain helicopters.
Yeah. I mean, like Leonardo also drew one, you know, so that was around.
Sure.
There was some source material there. Yeah.
No, it's a weird thing. I don't get it.
Where are you at on rotorcraft generally, Erin? What's your vibes on the space helicopters of the day? The Mars Sample Return ones maybe are out now, but you know.
I have a lot of space for Ingenuity. I think that thing is rad. I want more of them. I was following its little logbook there for a while. I'm all about that. And I also love that it was relatively inexpensive to come up with and a great way to explore the surface. So I'm all about rotorcraft, obviously.
How much does a real helicopter cost?
Is it $3.35
Vastly
billion?
depends. Yeah, it really depends on what you want.
What is the one
kind of
that you
pricey
flew?
though.
Go into the unit pricing of the Griffin. Let's see.
Yeah, I want to know.
Do you want the upgraded version or the? Yeah, I think Wikipedia said like 8 million per unit or something like that.
Let's see. Unit.
8 million?
I don't know. Something. It's on
That
Wikipedia.
seems-
I think the unit cost.
That sounds cheap to me, and like now we're learning that Ingenuity was way more expensive than a real helicopter.
What was your Ingenuity?
I think Ingenuity was 80 million.
Yeah, but was that you had to ship it? You had to ship it to Mars. That's different, right?
Is that what they were
The
building
bus
for?
was
Yeah, I don't
leaving
know.
anyway. What's the marginal shipment cost on that, really?
Yeah, you'd have to look up the cost of a Griffin, but I have no idea.
My
I just know
Googling
it's way
is,
more than I get paid.
It's just failing me here. Let's see. I'm finding a lot of like sustainment and modernization pricing on this bad boy, but
And you can't go by the Canadian government procurement runs because we're just not good at procuring aircraft. You have to look for different figures if you want to do
listen.
that.
Next question, please.
Again, we're talking to an American here. If anyone knows how to procure
maybe we
aircraft
learned
on
from
an
you. I don't know,
extreme
but
scale, yes.
It's complicated.
See the time when
It is
all
very
20
complicated.
B-2 bombers took off and we were supposed to have like 300 or whatever, but I don't know. We were supposed to buy a lot of those. Unrelated, I've been watching Masters of the Air, and I just have a strong recommendation for that because
That's a great
B-17s
show.
are just heroin to me, and there was a lot of them. Turns out that one we were really good at procuring those back in the day.
Well, you had to
Yes,
be,
you
right? But that's a really good show. I enjoyed
It's
that.
a great
for sure.
show. Yeah,
yeah.
big shout out. What's the good helicopter show?
Oh gosh, I don't even know.
Is there good helicopter content out there? Airwolf?
I mean, no, not Airwolf. I actually don't know. I don't watch a lot of helicopter.
Why isn't there no helicopter content?
I don't know. I think people just don't know how cool they are. We're just keeping it secret, within the community only.
The movie about the finding Bin Laden, the Zero Dark 30, has some pretty cool helicopter content. Those stealth helicopters
Not
that like.
sure those are real, but
I don't know if they're real either, but it was still cool content.
it was pretty neat for sure.
Yeah, it looked like someone saw a Nighthawk and said, "We should make a helicopter that looks like that."
Wait, they made up because there was one that like crashed during that, right? Or they blew it up because they couldn't fly it out or something, and there was like the tail left behind. I saw
maybe
it's
it's real, but no one actually knows what it looks like, so they had to pick some creative license. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
the
it's
spy
good
planes
movie.
get all of the hype, but like there's probably some crazy looking helicopters out there.
Yeah, there probably is.
Yeah, Erin knows. She can't tell us.
Yeah, she's not telling us, but she knows. When I was a kid, I played this video game, a helicopter simulator. I think it was called maybe Comanche or something like that, or Apache. One of the. And I remember playing that and thinking this was the coolest flight simulator game because my dad was into airplanes and stuff, and we had all these different flight simulator games. And I remember playing that one it was different. I was not afraid of that helicopter. Again, I was a kid. So.
Yeah, you got a weird.
I think I played. I'm gonna age myself here, but Star Fox.
Star Fox, hell yeah!
Yeah,
You're gonna
I really
age yourself.
enjoyed that.
That's not that long ago.
Not
You're aging all
helicopters,
of
but
us.
Star Fox is red. Yeah, there you go.
Still a lot of spinning in Star Fox, just different kind.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
I might go fire that up tonight. That was a great game.
Jeez, that was a great game.
Yeah. I had another thing that was coming to my head, but I forgot it at this point, Jake.
It's gone. It's gone forever now.
It's gone.
Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna ask if have you flown any astronauts in your helicopter?
No, excuse me, not
Would you
yet.
like to-
Maybe one day.
Who would you fly in your helicopter if you could take someone?
Give me
Are
one
any
second.
astronauts afraid of helicopters? That's what I need to know.
Great question.
No, I've not flown any astronauts in a helicopter. I'd like to, though. We'll see. Maybe one day if we ever
Your
get helicopters
assignment-
at Ellington Field.
I was gonna say your
Is to
assignment
fly.
is to fly all the astronauts, as many as you can, and find out which one is afraid of helicopters, like Jake is, and then figure out why they are
We'll see
okay
about
with
that.
flying on a rocket. I always wondered this.
Yeah, right,
This
not
is the
flying
thing
on a
I've
rocket.
wondered about astronauts being scared of things and things that normal people are scared of that astronauts do a lot. So, when you get up into 0G, right? Theoretically, that feels the same as riding on a roller coaster. You just don't have any of the other sensations of the roller coaster, which is like incredible relative speed based on what's around you, the visceral nature of almost hitting the ground every time you're flying down. And everyone's terrified of that. Even if you like roller coasters, you're like, ah, you yell a bit, right? But why does nobody have that when they get up into zero G for the first time? Why is it so different?
Just constantly screaming in the headset.
But is it purely the relative nature of that? Like everything else is also, so your mind is like, I'm floating versus I'm plummeting to the ground.
You know, that's a good question. I've not asked, but I don't know how they manage to not be freaked out all the time. I think some of them say it's nerve wracking, but they've done so much training to get to that point that I think by the time.
Okay, what about all of the people on New Shepard who didn't? You know, like I'm just saying, if you took someone who's terrified of a roller coaster, of like drops on a roller coaster, me when I was younger, for sure, right, and put them on a New Shepard, would they also feel the same way during the zero G portion? I don't know. This is the thing I've always wondered about it in my life. And
I think this is an experiment you should approach Blue Origin with.
Yeah.
Find 6 people terrified of roller coasters and convince them to go on a space ride? Like, what?
See what happens.
Tall order.
In terms of psychological assessment of some kind.
I will start up a proposal for a study, and I'll see if I can get some funding. It
Jeff,
sounds like it would cost. Yeah, shout out. If you're listening, this sounds like it would cost between $6 and $20 million. I don't know what the flight rates are these days, but it does sound like it would probably be on that order.
Less than Ingenuity.
Less than Ingenuity, yeah.
Somewhere between a Griffin and Ingenuity, yes.
Yeah, somewhere between a Griffin and Ingenuity.
Exactly.
I just want to know. So, all right, Erin, can you just ask around some of the astronauts, find out take a poll, who was afraid of roller coasters?
Okay.
Why does it feel so different? Because it's clearly not, like, what I'm trying to get at is that everyone thinks it's the feeling in your stomach when you're on a roller coaster that makes you yell, and my theory is it's everything else. It's the fact that you're flying towards the ground and you're in a metal thing that you can see how fast you're going, because space is zero G is just like only the stomach thing and nothing else.
Right.
So this is my thesis.
There you go.
Let me know. Find the astronauts that were weird about roller coasters but have been
and I'll put that in work right now.
Yeah. At everyone in Slack real quick.
Please have it in by the end of the week. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Excellent. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Great.
Well, this has been awesome. Erin, I had fun. This is great.
100%.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys. You guys are.
I learned a lot about helicopters. Yeah.
Still terrified.
Still scary, but I know more about
it. If I ever take you up, we'll try a simulated auto rotation. How about that? It's a very good roller coaster analogy as well, if you're interested in doing some analog
I did
studies.
one. I did one once.
Not fun.
I kind of enjoyed it. I thought it was kind of interesting. Yeah.
It's like when you think about it, like I'm practicing this in case I lose both my engines, and that would be a really bad day. So it's like I'll do them, but only because I have to.
Yeah.
Learn.
Don't like that.
To make sure.
Don't like that.
Yeah. Or I run out of gas. That could be also why.
Gas. It's the gas tank thing, Jake. All your basal fears. Jake's fear factor is this episode.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Erin, I doubt you have anything that you can publicly plug and for people to come follow you at NASA Johnson, but what should they go check out if they're interested in helicopters or Erin in particular?
I guess LinkedIn. Not the coolest one.
That was the
might
link
be the
I
best
provided.
place to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that cleared up. At least there was one person in the Discord who thought we were having Erin Andrews on the show today, which is different. That's a different thing.
It's different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, no football
but I do.
Today.
Yeah, exactly. I do appreciate you guys reaching out because it's a long overdue catch up on what's been going on for sure. And it's great.
We have to give a small shout out to your brother too, though, because
100%.
We had already had you on a list, and then he messaged me at some point and was just like, "Why don't you have Erin on yet?" And I was like, I need to go.
Brother, my brother Brad is one of my most favorite humans on this planet. He's a great big brother for sure.
Yeah, and he's an Erin booster, so it's good. Anthony, what do we got going on next week?
Am I correct in that this week was all about helicopters? Yeah. Next week is all about rocket bikes.
Rocket bikes.
We've got Peter Beck on the show finally. It's been long overdue as well that Peter Beck will be joining us. So we'll be straddling the date line there. I think he's going to be waking up with 4 shots of espresso.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see. I think it's a 8 a.m. New Zealand time that we're doing. So
something like that. Yeah.
It's realized that this time of the year
in the time zones that it just doesn't make any sense anymore. No one knows what day it is. So.
But this is the time of the year where we can have Australians and New Zealanders on, because it's the regular time and it's still a reasonable hour for them or for us. So
right.
When the time zones shift a little or daylight saving shifts a little, it's not as good. So that should be happening. It's going to be great. So
rocket bikes, that sounds rad. I'm going to tune in
bikes.
For that.
Yeah. We got some Ashley Vance follow-up there.
We do, yeah. All right.
Well, y'all.
Thanks again, Erin. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us today.
See you later. And if you come back and tell me that Victor Glover's scared of roller coasters, I'm going to be very disappointed. So please don't shatter my dreams in this way.
I don't think he's afraid of anything, that guy.
All right, y'all. See you later.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
See ya.